Hey, what's up everybody? Bdf coming at you with another video. Alright, so keeping it local again today since the Lakers play at 4:30. I did my laundry already and now I'm walking out the house, grab some protein, some meat for my food, and some bananas, and that's really all I really need. But I'm not about to eat my food without some type of protein, so that's exactly what I'm gonna purchase. It's been raining, clouds look too, as you guys can clearly see, so I'm taking myself down the street. I ain't gonna be doing too much going to Hollywood. The sun came out for about a half a second. I don't think it's gonna be out for much longer though, so we're gonna make this a quick, very quick trip down the street. Yeah, so I made a playlist yesterday rather, in the daytime and afternoon, whatever it was, since it was cold and raining. Decided not to go out, even though I really felt like it. I have felt like it all week. This has been a situation where between the weather and the Lakers schedule, it's kind of kept me from doing what I like to do. I never felt the Lakers schedule was a burden in my life. Never. I've always been a Laker fan, but I can legitimately say that these early games and these back-to-backs, they've kind of taken the fun out of this for me. And that's the truth. This season hasn't sucked. Like, for example, for the last couple of seasons, it's been the on-the-court product that I haven't loved. The product is fine, but the schedule is not. And so now the team is fun and got this new exciting player, but the schedule's a burden. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm just a little frustrated. But overall, we're dedicated. I left the video there on the game tonight. I did homework on today's opponent and then tomorrow's opponent already. So my homework is done for this particular back-to-back, but of course we got a day off and then 2 games back-to-back and then a day off there and then play these same 2 teams that we have on this back-to-back then. So it's not going to be as much homework on the back end of this back-to-back, but on that 1 day off I will have to watch 2 teams worth of highlights again, the Spurs and the Phoenix Suns. So it's like, you know, it's inconvenience, to be honest with you. All of this is an inconvenience. If I just watched the game and didn't do a channel and have all this that I love to do attached to my season experience, it wouldn't be as much of a burden. But that I cover the game on my channel with this schedule, it makes it so much more to do than just, hey, the game's on, let's turn it on, like it used to be when I was a kid. So that's also part of it. It's my dedication to what it is that I do here and how it incorporates so much more responsibility to each game. So yeah, man, it is what it is, man. But right now it's cold, it's windy, cold for LA standards anyway, and it's about to be raining, and I'm just trying to make sure I have what I need for my meal tonight. What was I gonna say? Everything's been pretty good. Meditating, praying, asking the Lord to help me trust Him when He tells me something. You know, it was a situation where the Lord was telling me, hey, in meditation, and what came to mind yesterday was, if I confirm something to you, it's somewhat disrespectful for you to then turn to somebody else and ask them if they too got a confirmation on something. I did that very recently with my homegirl B. I was like, yo, the Lord's been giving me something. I believe He's been communicating with me about a certain thing, but I don't trust that this is actually coming from the Lord. So what are you getting on this? Would you pray on this for me? See what God tells you? And essentially God was telling me, that's not how you do it. If I communicate with you something, my yes is my yes, my no is my no. You know, I'm not a doctor. God's basically saying in His prayer, I'm not a doctor. You don't need a second opinion on my prognosis or diagnosis or whatever. If I say something to you, you don't need to go to the 3rd or the 4th person. But what you can end up doing is going to the 3rd and 4th person, and then it'll throw a monkey wrench in what it is that I gave you, because you don't know what they're going to get from praying about what it is that you're talking about. For all you know, they're not connected to me at all, but think they are. And they may tell you something that ain't connected to me at all, and then you'll weigh that against what it is that's been confirmed from within yourself. So, that's kind of what came my way in prayer. And if God is coming to you with something, if you believe he's really communicating with you, you don't need to ask nobody else. But just the same, it's like, how good is that advice for somebody else who may think they're communicating with God, but who is not? So I will say that is information, or rather a statement that I don't know if everybody should be applying. Because a lot of people believe God is in their head, and sometimes they're wrong, which is why I don't trust what I feel sometimes in that regard. But what I've been receiving just the same is, if I tell you something, that's what it is. You welcome me into your heart, then trust that I'm there. Are you saying that I can't communicate? Are you saying that I don't know what I'm talking about? Like, at some point in time, you got to ask yourself if your faith is truly where it needs to be. If you believe in God and he's telling you something and you don't trust him, or you don't trust that it's him that's communicating, then why believe in him in any area if that's what you're thinking? And it doesn't take into account how many times he's proven to me that voice is him, which is essentially what he was saying. So I don't think he was upset at me, but he just wanted me to continue to work on that aspect of my faith. Trusting him is fairly new in this regard for me. It's only been in a space where I really trusted that voice 100% for about a year and a half, 2 years since I've basically been in this situation. That's when I learned to truly trust God the way that I've been discussing with y'all. And so that's really what it comes down to. So yeah, man, I just was thinking about that. I'm like, I want to believe God is in a communicative space with me, but sometimes I get mixed signals from that energy, as we've talked about months ago, where I felt like I had gotten some mixed signals. And so it's just like, man, I don't know if it's all in my head or not. Half of this stuff, how certain can I be if not for the confirmation of the Lord showing me things outside of my brain that coincide with the things that are in my brain? And that's kind of what he's been doing lately, to be honest with you. As I told you very recently about a situation where something that he had placed in my heart was also aligned with something that was actually going on outside of my understanding. It was later confirmed to me by somebody else. So it was like, when you have that, it should be the confidence that the Lord is in you. And that's essentially what was coming my way. So, this walk in faith and in believing in God and communicating with God and all this type of stuff, it's not as seamless as it is talking to a human being. You're in a world where things are confirmed by seeing and senses and touches and all these different senses. So when you're trying to walk in faith and you're trying to trust that voice that you feel is coming from the Holy Spirit, it's really about trust and belief until confirmation comes. And in that space, while you're waiting for that confirmation, you may not trust what you're hearing in your head. You may not know if it's really what it is. Sometimes you may end up having situations where you think you hear that voice and it tell you something that ain't necessarily true, which has happened a couple times, which also throws the doubt in there. And it's like, well, God, why would that voice be telling me stuff that ain't necessarily accurate? It's like, is that voice at all, or should I trust this in any way? It just becomes a situation where you just gotta go out on faith and listen to what it is and that the Lord is telling you, and just do your very best to trust him when he tells you something, that it is what it is he says it is. And when it comes to certain things, it's about the alignment of timing a lot of times, not necessarily you running with it at the moment you want to move, but it being revealed to you as the time comes around for it to be the case. So it gets rather frustrating. But another thing that came to mind is a lot of stuff that we ask for confirmation on. When you're like me, I can't speak for everybody, but for myself, when you believe you have some type of communication with a higher power, a lot of times we want the Lord to illustrate things, confirm things that we're not best for having confirmed. And you get frustrated with God for not giving you a full blueprint of your entire future. You know what I mean? Some stuff we're best not knowing. But what came to mind when I was meditating on that is God is a winner. So if he doesn't provide confirmation, or if he doesn't communicate with you at all, you leaning in on faith in his name, it means that you're aligning with the winning side. So if for some reason he tells you few things, but maybe not everything, it's the stuff that you aren't told that's probably for the betterment of you and how you would ultimately handle certain things, how you perceive certain things. And we understand that as hindsight is 20/20. Some stuff is like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have found that out at this time, because if I would have found that out at that time, I would have handled it the wrong way, etc. And so when we consider the fullness of God's understanding and the limited understanding of what we would do or what's best for us to know, a lot of times those of us who believe God communicates with us may find that God doesn't want to communicate certain things. But just the same, he'll tell us, hey, I got your back. Go out on faith, play this out, not knowing what's coming, and know that you're on the winning side. I will make sure it works out in your favor. And for a person like myself, depending on what it is, I may not be pleased with that. That's what I've struggled with. It's like, yo, Lord, what's going to happen here? What is best here? And it's not meant for me to know. It may not be meant for me to know. But I'm on the winning side, so if I trust him, I will get what I need from the situation. I will be who I need to be in the situation. I will align with what it is that he wants me to align with within the situation. And maybe I'm not best for knowing, but it's like, you know what, this is something that requires me to be a little more confident than maybe I am, or this requires me to be a bit more bold than I feel I want to be, or this requires me to put myself on the line in ways that you can save me from, Lord. And you just tell me if this is for me and I know how to approach it. But you knowing how to approach that particular thing may ruin what it is that truly needs to be. It's that you don't know that makes it line up perfectly. And that's the part I was struggling with on something that I was talking to God about. I want you to go out on faith in this particular thing. I don't want you to know what's about to happen. It's going to affect how you handle it. And you being affected in that way is not good for the circumstance. You know, it's like, you know, it's that you step out on a limb that it works out the way that I want it to. It's that you don't know that lines it up perfectly so that you're the right piece for the puzzle itself. If you know, then you suddenly it don't play out the same way. If you get this confirmation and you don't trust me in a way that I need you to in this situation, maybe you're going to move a certain way that doesn't align up right because of your knowledge. That knowledge is not good for you. But just the same, if you trust me when I say, hey, I got it, God says, I got your back, I'm going to take care of it, then whatever it is that he's intending through you knowing or not knowing will be what ultimately allows for you to celebrate the most. If everything is about ultimately you being fine and being pleased with the outcome, then you need to know that the Lord has your best interest at heart. And you will celebrate most for doing things his way. Which is a struggle for me when I want not to have to take chances, or when I feel like my time could potentially be wasted, or when I feel like this ain't lining up the way that I ultimately think it should, but it kind of looked like it could, so maybe it's worth doing. But man, if it goes bad, suddenly I'm unhappy, and if I'm unhappy, it could derail me in other areas of my life. So Lord, save me from that. That's what I think. That's not what God knows. That's what I think. You see what I'm saying? He already knows, and that's the part that I need to continue to work on within myself, even though I speak and preach that to you guys. Doesn't necessarily mean that in the moment I have the temperament to see things his way without the knowledge of what it is that he's actually looking at. When he's asking me to go out on a limb, or he's asking me to just trust something, or he's asking me to just, be willing to take a loss, potentially, as I see it lined up to be. I ain't gonna tell you this is gonna work out your way, but I do want you to go forward. Well, why the heck would I want to do that? Because in the end, You're going to celebrate for this path being the way that it is. It's like, man, I don't want to deal with that. Well, this is what it is. I've lined up for you, so that's what it is. I don't accept that, God. Okay, well, you ain't going to have the better path to take. Because I didn't line it up for you to have it the easy way, nor did I line it up for you to know every dang thing. But I did line it up for your betterment, so long as you trust me in that, is why I'm asking God to help me be better. Because I'm going to be honest with you, as of this morning, I ain't really there. I hear him, but when it comes to me having the temperament to do whatever, or to live without understanding and still go forward in the risk, the temperament, the wisdom, yes. The belief, yeah. Trust, yeah. Temperament is where I struggle. And my nerves ain't good enough to just go out on this dang limb when I know there's a 50-50 chance of it going absolutely south. I don't really like those odds. God says he has my back. All right, in my mindset, tell me what it is I'm dealing with so I know how to approach it, so I can protect my emotions or protect my interests. It's not meant for you to protect your interests. It's meant for you to trust me. That's where I have a problem. That's where the temperament has yet to be mature enough to say, okay, God, well, let's all, as I was telling you guys a few weeks ago, let's walk down this path, even though I don't know what's down this path. Let me go around this corner, even though there may be danger around this corner. You tell me to walk down this street, I'm protected. That's where the temperament to follow through on what you need to do has to be worked on. And so that's what I'm telling all of y'all, man. Talking to God, I'm getting mixed signal about a certain thing. It's like, bro, I don't want to go out on a limb just to find myself getting the worst end of what it is I think this could be. Nor do I like feeling like you know what I need and you ain't telling me. And it's like, well, I mean, at the end of the day, he knows everything. And he don't have to tell us anything. You know what I mean? But if he wanted us to suffer, then he would put us through a lot of suffering. If he wanted us to succeed, then we'll succeed. And if he says he has your back, then obviously he wants you to succeed. He's told me he has my back in regards to what I'm talking about, but I still struggle with the temperament to follow when I don't know what I'm dealing with. And that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at with what we're talking about, without actually saying what I'm talking about, but just internally in regards to my communication with God. I felt a little frustrated waking up this morning, feeling like he had told me so much but left out of a major part, you know, that kind of thing. How he had given me so much confidence that he has my back, but then when I ask him if things are going to go a certain way, I get either no response or the response is, well, it may not. It's like, well, if it may not, then obviously I don't need to be going down this path. You know, it's that kind of thing. Like, well, I don't think it's going to be what you think it's going to be, but you'll be happy just the same. It's like, nah, I ain't rolling with that. Like, that's where I'm struggling. That's where my defiance and my ego and me thinking I know better than God ultimately is not working in my favor. But, you know, the key to all of this is you're going to celebrate better for taking the path out God wants you to go. That's what I know is true. I'd be much happier if I follow God's intention of what it is that ultimately I want. And so, to have the temperament to follow that, know the wisdom, and then from there, have the nerve to live through the path needed to go down for the best possible outcome. And you don't know what's next. You don't know. That's at the end of the day, things could be lined up or scheduled a certain way. For example, the Lakers. We knew we had this big time struggle of a schedule ahead. A guy like LeBron James knew exactly what he needed to do to assure that he could get through this schedule. Probably had it all planned out in his head, knew exactly what was going to do. This is what's going to happen because of the schedule. But God had different plans for LeBron entirely. LeBron ended up having an injury. He's in LA during this tough schedule. You see what I'm saying? What it says on the schedule may not necessarily be what it's going to be. What it looks like it's lined up to be doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be the same person when it's time for you to take those steps. Maybe God has a different plan for you. Maybe God has different plans for other pieces in the puzzle, so to speak. So whatever it is you think you're measuring and got lined up may not actually be the case. But if God isn't telling you, hey, because I see all those variables, you're looking at the schedule. I'm looking at the future. Essentially what God's telling me. You're looking at the schedule, and I'm telling you, I've already seen the movie and how it play out. So you gonna trust the guy who knows the story, or you gonna trust that you need to prepare for what it says on the schedule? And that's essentially what God is telling me. You're gonna be pleased based on the truth of what's happening, not what you think based on the schedule. You're gonna be pleased by following things my way. This, and this you would rather not know, based on what's about to happen, not what you think is gonna happen, not what the schedule say. If you want to celebrate at the end of this process, this is what's gonna be what gets you there. And so it's like, all right, man, whatever, bro. But at the end of the day, what I need you to help me with is the temperament to do this. Because as long as I see this dang schedule, and I live in a world where prove it is the way, and gravity is what limits us, there's always going to be certain adherence to that. And that is what I also want to work through. I have no doubt God understands that, but I also understand that He does understand that He's still telling me to do this. And so that's what I want to tell people. A lot of us who talk this God talk, walking that walk and talking that talk can be very, very different things. I can always tell you what you need to do, overcome your fears, to face what it is you need to face. And to discipline yourself, you need to discipline yourself against certain things. But when it's time for you to actually do it, that's a whole nother story. And it's not one that you can just write off if you're in my shoes when talking about other people. It's just like asking people to overcome phobias. I got a person who's afraid of pickles. And no, you ain't got to be worried about these pickles. These pickles ain't nothing to be afraid of. Well, yes, you know that, you believe that. But based on what it is they got going on in their head, that's a real task. So you being frivolous about it and detached about it doesn't make it any easier for them when they have to face it. It's not only the wisdom of trusting you when you say that there's nothing to be afraid of, but also having the temperament to then experience it and overcome that for which is irrational fear. And so it's two different things. I trust God. He's telling me, hey, this is what you prefer. But I'm still faced with the concerns that I have based on living in a world, gravity, all that. You know what I'm saying? So I guess what I'm learning to ask for is help, not only with my perception of things, trusting in God, but also for the temperament in the moment and the strength in the moment to trust, to go out on the limb of faith, to live without the understanding of confirmation in the present of maybe other things being confirmed, and knowing that I'm fit for what it is that I would ultimately prefer at the end of this process. That is what I'm asking the Lord to help me with, absolute and utter temperament. My nerves, my trust, my willingness to complain, my attitude, my functioning within the circumstances, my wants within what it is that ultimately we're looking at, my adherence to the understanding that this is a schedule that I'm looking at and not a layout of the future. That's where I really am going to ask the Lord to help me through in many situations, not just what I'm involved in today, but in many situations, to know the difference between talking to the guy who's already seen the movie and then looking at the layout of what this looks like it could be and thinking that I need to prepare against that for which the person who's seen it already is ultimately telling me otherwise. I guess is what I'm trying to say. So that's what it is, man. Praying about that. Trusting God is not as easy and as simple as maybe I made it sound in my conversation. And I want those who are lacking in their faith to understand that once you have faith, you still got plenty to overcome, plenty to face, plenty to win, plenty of battles to win within yourself and your ego and your perception and your wisdom, limited wisdom that the Lord is not held back by. And communicating with God, trusting that those communications are exactly that and not just you manifesting something in your imagination. not allowing the enemy to apply that same tone of voice to things that ultimately deter you from believing that that voice is true, by sending you down wild goose chases, speaking in the same type of voice as the Lord would otherwise. To keep on asking the Lord to be in your mind, to protect against that, and to help you through that when you fail to protect against that or what have you. I want to believe in you when I think it's your voice coming to me telling me something and it actually don't play out that way. I still want to believe that your voice is in my heart, sending me down the right path when you do choose to. Because God's situation is a call and response. But as I said a few days ago, he may not respond with the quickness that you would ultimately ask. The devil may. If you say, hey, God, what's going on with this? Devil get back to you fast. Hey, God, what's going on with that? Devil may get back to you fast. God may take 5 minutes. If you're willing to wait on him, you'll get what you're looking for. If you need a quicker response, it may be the enemy in there trying to distort your mind, telling you what you need to hear, ultimately telling you what you're easy to accept, which a lot of times is the negative aspect of things that you're hopeful for. For me, I'm more quick to believe the pessimistic thought that would be otherwise easier for me to confirm that things are not going to work out. That's where my brain tends to ultimately be likely to trust that you will not get, that it is not going to work out, that you in fact are dealing with this and it ain't that good, rather than no, it's going to be fine. I'm more likely to believe the pessimism. And so a lot of times when things are being told to me that in my head or the Lord is bringing forth energy to me, I'm more likely to believe that it ain't going to work out in the favor that I'm hopeful for. Or I get a little angry because it's like, man, I don't think this is going to work out. This probably ain't God telling me nothing positive. It's probably the enemy trying to tell me something that's ultimately going to get my hopes up and let me down. And so it's like to psych yourself out that way is something that requires a great deal of prayer around in order to not let it happen. So that's where I'm at, man. That's where I'm at with my walk of life. At the end of the day, you got to step up and sometimes just go out on faith, not expect God to give you every answer for everything, or maybe anything, depending on what it is he wants to do in your life. It is required that you walk by faith, not by sight. And maybe your temperament don't really want to deal with that. Maybe you feel like you're about to waste your time doing that. But what you're looking at is a schedule. What God understands is how it plays out. Bdf 44, I thank you all for watching. I'm out.